So keeping with tradition, at least as of recently, I've been covering a lot of the arcade systems and boards. Well, today we're going to finally make it around to probably what it would be considered a fan favorite, or probably one of the more popular systems for arcades, and that would be the Neo Geo and its cousin, the Neo Geo CD. Now, it does get a little confusing when you start talking about Neo Geo AES and Neo Geo MVS. So the AES and the MVS are pretty much the exact same. AES stands for Advanced Entertainment System, and the MVS stands for Multi-Video System. And the MVS was more specifically the arcade variant, where the AES was more the home variant. Hi, my name is Brad, and today on Unbroken Software Studio Tutorials, I'll be taking you through how to import your Neo Geo arcade ROMs, or your Neo Geo MVS ROMs, as well as your Neo Geo CD, Q, and bin files into LaunchBox, so that way you can play them through Final Burn Alpha and MES. So like usual, let's go ahead and import our games. So let's go ahead and start with the SNK Neo Geo CD platform in LaunchBox. First, we're going to go to Tools, Import, ROM Files. We're going to click Next, Add Files. We're going to browse to where we have our games downloaded, and I have all my Neo Geo CD games here. So in the top right where it says Search, we're going to type in *.cue. We're going to click on a cue sheet. We're going to Control A to highlight them all. We're going to click Open. Next, the platform, we're going to click the drop down, and we're going to go down to the S's for SNK. We're going to select SNK Neo Geo CD from the drop down. We're going to click Next. And then where it shows the choose the emulator option, we're going to either click the drop down and select MES and then edit, or you're going to click on add. If you've never added MES before, there are a couple of other MES tutorials on the channel, so I would also invite you guys to go ahead and take a look at those tutorials as well if you have other things that you would like to emulate with MES and you want to get more acquainted with MES. There are other MES tutorials on the channel. So essentially, this is using just a standalone version of MES that we downloaded from EmuCR. So do keep that in mind. If you do have a version of MAME that has MES integrated, one of the more recent versions of MAME, you can also just use that. But personally, I prefer to use MES standalone. The associated platforms tab, we're going to scroll down and we're going to double click on an empty space. You're going to type in SNK, and if your SNK Neo Geo platform doesn't automatically fill in, which it may not, then go ahead and make sure to fully type it out. Make sure it's typed in matching the default system name. So if you named it the default SNK Neo Geo CD, make sure that it matches here in the associated platforms column. On the default command line parameters column, we're going to go and double click the empty space. We're going to type in Neo CDZ space dash CDRM. And I'll show you how I came across that in a minute. If you do have Neo Geo AES ROMs, they're usually .bins instead of .zips. The .bins are the home variant version, and the .zips are usually the MAME or arcade versions of those games. Like I said, mostly the same thing, but we're not specifically covering the AES. However, if you do have AES ROMs that you would like to use for the SNK Neo Geo, just go ahead and use this command line here for AES ROMs. Then we're going to go ahead and click OK. And then we're going to click Next, use the files in their current location. We're going to download all the metadata and media that we can find from the LaunchBox Games database. It's going to log you into Emu Movies. We're going to do the same thing, including video. Next. It's going to go ahead and parse through the list of games. Once you see that you've got your list set up the way that you want, go ahead and click Finish, or you can click on a game and press Delete to remove it from the menu, or double click and rename something if that's also something that you need to do here before the import. Once that is finished, go ahead and click Finish. It'll import all your games, and it'll automatically download and find all of the metadata and media that it can find. However, at least with the names that my games were using. Some of them didn't get found automatically. There are also some games that don't exist in the Neo Geo CD portion of our database. So you may have to manually right click and edit and change around the name a little bit and search. You may also have to pull the metadata from the Neo Geo portion of the database or from the arcade portion of the database. Just know that the media might be slightly different. So you may notice that I have got some regular Neo Geo arcade images, some Neo Geo home system images that are not, they're supposed to be all CD, but I'd rather it all look like it's full than have there be any gaps. So that's just me personally. Then we're gonna go ahead and add the SNK Neo Geo, and this is pretty much just like if you were to add any other arcade system. So we're gonna go to Tools, Import ROM Files. We're gonna click Next, Add Files. We're gonna navigate to where we have these games this time. We're gonna click on one of the zips, Control A to highlight them all. We're gonna click Open. We're gonna click Next. In the drop-down menu, we're going to browse to SNK Neo Geo. I'm going to click Next. Where it shows the Choose an Emulator from the drop-down menu, I'm actually not going to be using MES. I'm going to be using Final Burn Alpha. So if you've followed the Final Burn Alpha arcade tutorial that I previously did, go ahead and choose Final Burn Alpha from the drop-down list. If not, go ahead and click Add. Type in the name, navigate to where you have FBA downloaded, and then the associated platform. You don't necessarily need anything special. You can add SNK Neo Geo into the list and click Default Emulator if you would like, but it only really matters during import. Once you've imported your games, to change emulators, you have to use the bulk edit wizard. So there you go. Then we're going to click Next, use the files in their current location. We're going to download all of the metadata that we can from the LaunchBox Games database and from Emu Movies. And then right here, we're going to click Force using MAME metadata for emulators other than MAME that use MAME files, because these are MAME files, or at least they're using the MAME naming scheme and DAT file, so we have to use the MAME importer. We're going to uncheck all of these boxes just to make sure that everything gets imported, since this is slightly different than regular MAME. And then we're going to skip clones and prioritize the North American region. We're going to go ahead and click Next. It's going to parse through the list of shorthand names. It's going to filter out all the parent and child ROMs, and it's going to give you a list of games based on the options that you chose from the previous menu. And so all of these games should now have the converted full name instead of the shorthand name that you may be accustomed to with MAME. Once you've got everything set up, same deal, delete and rename if you need to. Go ahead and click Finish once you're done. This may also not completely find all of the metadata and media, at least it didn't for me when I did my recent re-import for tests. So I had to go through and edit a couple of things here and there. So how I came across the MES default command line parameters, the link to this website will be in the description below. This is what I utilize for pretty much every system, along with my paste bin link, which will also be in the description below as well. So I just Controlled F'd and I typed in Neo to find Neo Geo CD. And so I did know that this red means that this is not currently emulated properly, so this BIOS we had to skip. So instead of using the Neo CD BIOS, I know that I would rather use the green checkbox, or the green filled in section. So Neo Geo CDZ US. So that's why we use the Neo Geo CDZ command to denote loading those BIOS. I then take that BIOS name and I head on over to my list of file extensions. I then Control F. I type in, Neo CDZ. I find it in the list, and then I know that it's going to be using the CDRM file extension. So that's how I came across the default command line parameter being Neo CDZ space dash CDRM. These flop 1, flop 2, hard, cart, CAS1, CAS2, CDRM, these need dashes beforehand. The BIOS do not, so that's why my list looks the way that it does. And knowing that it uses the CDRM, we do know that we can load either CHD files, Q files, TOC files, NRGs, GDIs, ISOs, and CDRs. However, we are using Q sheets, so do keep that in mind. If you have a CHD ROM set, a CHD MAME or software list or MAME ROM set, what have you, wherever you got it from, do note that the Neo CDZ BIOS do also load the CHD as well. And then I've personally downloaded my Final Burn Alpha and MES variants from EmuCR. This is a relatively well-known and okay place to get some of the builds of the emulators that you like. For the most part, I try to stick to the website for getting these builds. So the Final Burn Alpha website would actually be totally fine, but for MES, for example, this is the only way that you can find it in the standalone form. So on the right hand side where it says categories, you go down to arcade, you click on MES, and then you find MES in the drop down, or not the drop down, in the list here. So 925, you would download that, and then that would be the executable that we use inside of LaunchBox. So we're going to right click, we're going to open MES, and you're either going to go down to the configure options here, configure directories, the ROMs path. Now you're going to need to add the path to your MAME ROMs folder. So if you have a MAME ROMs pack, a MAME 179 ROMs pack, I believe is what they're on now, or add the path to your current ROMs folder. So that way MES is looking in its default ROMs folder and your MAME ROMs folder. The reason being is because if you download a MAME ROM pack of 178B or 179, what have you, all of the BIOS that you need for every system that MES and MAME emulate are in that ROM pack. All of the BIOS are there. So you just need to tell MES where that file path is. The file path can be different. It does not necessarily need to be in your MAME 178B or 179/ROMs path. It can be anywhere, but this is the default location. So I put it in my ROMs path so I don't have to change my MAMEs folder path, if that makes any sense. I just only have to change the MES path to look in the MAME folder as well. So there is a little bit of a duplicate here in terms of overlapping on tutorials. So in the last arcade tutorial that I did, Arcade Part 3, I did cover Final Burn Alpha. Now, if you do have a Final Burn Alpha ROM set that you've, followed the tutorial on last time with, you already have all of the Neo Geo MVS stuff ready to go. However, if you've just downloaded a Neo Geo MVS or Neo Geo MAME ROM set only, where it's only those ROMs and not the rest of the Final Burn Alpha stuff, then there is also a little bit more that we need to do with Final Burn Alpha. So right click a game, open Final Burn Alpha, we're going to go to MISC and configure ROM paths. Where it says path 1, it should be leading to your Final Burn Alpha ROMs folder. Now last time, this is why I had everyone put their Final Burn Alpha ROM set in the ROMs folder, because Final Burn Alpha is automatically looking in that location for the ROMs and the BIOS, mostly the BIOS. In path 2, we now need to add the path to our MAME ROMs folder, which is where the MAME ROM pack lies. Now again, if you have all of the Final Burn Alpha stuff in the ROMs folder, even if you downloaded a separate Neo Geo ROM pack, because you've already downloaded FBA stuff into the ROMs folder, Neo Geo BIOS are already in the right location. Final Burn Alpha knows where to look. We only really need to add the MAME path if you've only downloaded a Neo Geo pack, for example. So if you've just downloaded a Neo Geo pack, you need to add the ROMs path, so that way Final Burn Alpha knows where to look for the BIOS, if that makes much sense. I have my Final Burn Alpha looking in multiple locations, and it just so happens to be that in multiple locations, BIOS exists. However, if you only have them in one location, and it's not in your Final Burn Alpha ROMs folder, you need to tell Final Burn Alpha where that path is, so it knows where the BIOS are, so that it can know where to, so it can load the BIOS, because then it'll know where it is. I know that's a little bit confusing. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I know that can get a little confusing. For the most part, a lot of you do download MAME ROM packs, which is generally why I tell you guys to make that alternate path to your MAME ROMs folder, because a MAME ROMs pack will literally solve all of the BIOS needs that you need for MAME and MES, unless you need to alter the BIOS for some reason and you need to download very specific versions. Like, yeah, for the most part, a MAME ROMs pack solves all of that. With that very confusing bit out of the way, the ROM paths are set, MES and Final Burn Alpha knows where the BIOS are. Let's go ahead and test out these games and see if they work. With Final Burn Alpha, I didn't get this error to go away. Don't know why this pops up. I mean, I know what it says. I know, display mode, 0 hertz, BPP. I know what these are. I don't know where in the Final Burn Alpha settings to fix this yet. I'll get there one day, but we're going to click OK. If you see this screen, that's working, and there you go. It's now loading Aero Fighters 2 or Sonic Wings 2. The naming conventions on these things are freaking weird. So if you need help with the controls, input, and map game inputs, set dip switches, and all that kind of stuff is there in the settings. And there you go. Otherwise, let's check the Neo Geo CD. And one quick note, Final Burn Alpha does technically work with Neo Geo CD, but for the most part, a lot of the games that I tested in Final Burn Alpha actually didn't load. Final Burn Alpha specifically said that it didn't support a lot of these games, whereas MES has so far launched every game I've thrown at it. For example, Blues Journey or Ragai. I tried loading this specifically in Final Burn Alpha, and Final Burn Alpha just says, I don't support this game. Sorry, but you can see here that it's loading up in MES. So, yeah, there you go, guys. That is how you get the Neo Geo CD and the Neo Geo MVS systems up and running. It's more or less the same situation if you want to get Neo Geo AES ROMs set up. You just need to load it up with the right MES commands. You need to have MES pointed in the right location for the BIOS. You need to import the games, and then, you're off to the races with the AES. But specifically, that was the MVS and the CD. So again, I know it was really confusing, guys. If you have any questions, please leave your questions in the comments section below. That's going to be the best way to get your questions answered if you need any help. As well, Patreon producer credits are now scrolling up on screen. If you would like to see your name in the credits for one of the videos that I do weekly or bi-weekly, I guess, on this channel, or if you would like to see your names in the credits for LaunchBox, then head on over to our Patreon link in the description below. At least $2 a month gets you exclusive and early access to, at least right now, RSS and other shows in the future. And if you would like to pledge at the producer level, which is a couple dollars more, you will get your name in the credits for these videos and inside of LaunchBox, and every dollar really does help us significantly, and it allows us to do really cool things. My name is Brad. The link to my channel is in the description below. If this video helped you guys out at all, then please give us a thumbs up or subscribe for more videos in the future. Remember, Freaks and Geeks, to play more games, and we'll see you next time. Have a good day.